Welcome to this program on improving quality and reducing quality-related costs. This is our opening session, and our subject is proof of the need. Let's begin by stating our objective. Our objective is to develop the habit of annual improvements in quality and annual reductions in quality-related costs. Why do we need annual improvements? We need them to keep our products saleable and our costs competitive. Otherwise, we lose ground to every competitor who does make annual improvements. For a classic example, look at the Japanese Revolution in quality. Following World War II, the Japanese tried to convert their industries to civilian products, but they were unable to export due to poor quality. So they launched a revolution in quality. Let's diagram that out with the aid of our mysterious Mystica. In this model, the horizontal axis is time in decades. The vertical axis is quality, salability of the product. In 1950, Western quality was high. It has kept improving, but at an evolutionary pace. In 1950, Japanese quality was poor. The Japanese then invested in a massive training program. They learned how to improve quality. Then they made quality improvements at a revolutionary pace, year after year. My estimate is that by the mid-1970s, they had equaled Western quality. That revolution has progressively made Japanese products saleable, then competitive, and now in some product lines superior in quality. These quality improvements were nearly always accompanied by cost reductions. A classic example is that of the color television set. Until 1974, Quasar was an American-owned color television factory. It was competitive in quality in the U.S. market. Quasar was then sold to a Japanese company who introduced changes in product designs, vendor relations, manufacturing processes, and so on. Look at the effect of those changes on the costs of poor quality. Incidentally, during these sessions, I will be showing many visual aids on this screen, on this Tika, on the TV monitor. Most of these aids are reproduced in your workbook under the tab corresponding to the same session number. The page number will be flashed on the screen. Your workbook will usually include supplemental explanation beyond that contained in my oral presentation. The cost of service calls during warranty declined from 22 million per year down to 4 million. The number of factory personnel needed to find and repair in-house defects declined from 120 to 15. So, the new owners attained the best of both worlds: better quality for the users due to lower field failure rates, and lower costs for the manufacturer. Not only do we need improvement, we need the habit of improvement. To develop that habit, our management team should accept the responsibility for improvement. Understand the universal sequence of events through which managers make improvements. Learn the key concepts, techniques, and tools. And finally, apply the universal sequence to actual company problems. We will be talking about quality improvement. But what do we mean by that word improvement? First, let us define what we mean by control. Control is the process of detecting and correcting adverse change. Let's explain this by a graph. The horizontal scale is time. The vertical scale is performance. Anything that goes up is bad. Now suppose that our past performance has been 10% defective. Suppose also that we've been unable to get rid of that 10%. Typically we conclude, at least let's make sure that things don't get worse. So we set up to measure our actual performance. So long as our actual performance stays close to that 10%, all remains quiet. We have learned to live with that 10%. Subconsciously, we have accepted 10% as a sort of a standard. Now suppose there's a sporadic rise to 20%. That rise triggers many alarm signals. The supervision converges on the scene and takes corrective action. We call that firefighting, troubleshooting, and so on. Now, going from 20% to 10% is a sort of improvement, but it is not the kind of improvement we are talking about. What we are talking about is this big chronic area under the 10% line. If we could reduce that 10%, say to 3%, that would be a big gain. And it would go on and on and on. Reduction in that chronic level is the kind of improvement we are talking about, and it is very different from fighting sporadic fires. Now, if you wish to explain the distinction between sporadic and chronic to your colleagues, you can use the dialogue between the drunk and the half-wit. The drunk says, "You are stupid," and the half-wit says, "You are drunk." And the response is, "Correct, I am drunk, but tomorrow I'll be sober, and tomorrow you will still be stupid." Now, is that chronic loss a fate or a problem? Look at smallpox. Once it was called the scourge of God, a fate beyond the ability of humans to do anything about it. Then some determined humans waded in, and look at the history of smallpox in the United States. We see a chronic condition with occasional sporadic peaks. Now smallpox is extinct. It was a problem after all. Any improvement to unprecedented levels we will call breakthrough. We will use those two words, improvement and breakthrough, interchangeably. We define breakthrough as the organized creation of beneficial change. When we review many cases of breakthrough, we find that there is a universal sequence of events through which all managers made their improvements. Let's look at that universal sequence. First, there's proof of the need. Why change what we're doing? Then there's project identification. Specifically, what are we going to tackle? Then comes organization. Organization to guide each project, and organization to diagnose or analyze each project. Then follows diagnosis, a breakthrough in knowledge. Next comes remedial action on the new knowledge, including overcoming resistance to change. And finally, there is control at the new level, holding the gains. This sequence is universal. All breakthroughs follow that sequence. We will use this sequence as our roadmap. The first step is proof of the need. Many managers are so busy meeting this year's goals that they have no time for breakthrough. So they learn to live with the chronic wastes. For example, here's a process which for years has run at a scrap level of 10%. During those years, the various departments took steps to enable them to live with a 10%. Materials management has added a multiplier of 1.1 to the material order cards. Now there are no material shortages unless scrap exceeds 10%. Manufacturing engineering has provided 10% extra machinery to process that extra material. Now there are no manufacturing capacity bottlenecks unless scrap exceeds 10%. Accounting has added 10% to the cost standard. Now there is no cost variance unless scrap exceeds 10%. Quality control reports abnormal scrap, but scrap is not regarded as abnormal unless the 10% is exceeded. So all the departments have learned to live with the 10%. But in doing so, they have also disconnected the alarm signals. They no longer notice the 10%. But the process goes right on making 10% scrap. How then can we bring these chronic wastes out into the open? How can we prove the need to do something about them? The best way is to quantify the wastes into the language of management, the language of money. The result is a sort of alarm signal, an opportunity signal. It inflicts no pain, but it does stimulate many managers. Here's an example. A printing company raised the question, how much less would it cost us to operate if we had no defects? They came up with these figures. Notice the principal disclosures, the order of magnitude. The total of 1.7 million was a big sum for a modest-sized company. The big chunks consisting of proofreading, downtime of the processes while awaiting corrections, and correcting typographical errors. Collectively, these accounted for 82% of the money. Clearly, no major reduction was possible unless action could be taken on those big chunks. Notice also the modest prevention effort. The company was spending $30,000 per year, less than 2% of the waste. There seemed to be an opportunity to make an investment in improvement and to get a good return on that investment. Notice also it was presented in the language of management. Let me explain that by a diagram. Here is a pyramid of organization. At the apex is upper management. The general manager and immediate assistants. At the base are the first line supervisors and the workforce. In between are the middle managers and the specialists. There are many dialects in this pyramid, but only two standard languages. At the base is the language of things. Tons, meters, hours. At the top, the standard language is that of money. Sales, costs, profit, return on investment. Our middle managers are quite familiar with the special dialects of their respective departments. They are also familiar with the language of things, so they are able to communicate readily with the base of the pyramid. However, many middle managers are not familiar with the language of money. Hence, they communicate poorly with upper management. As a result, their proposals to upper management lose out in the competition with other middle managers who do communicate with upper managers in the language of money. The lesson is that the middle managers must become bilingual. Well, that printing company case looks logical enough. But how do we get figures like that for our company? There are two approaches. First, by estimates. This is the quick and dirty method. Through estimates, we can, with modest effort, learn in a matter of days or weeks, do we have a major opportunity, and where is it concentrated? Secondly, we can enlarge the accounting system. That takes a lot of effort, especially by the accounting and quality control departments. Also, it takes months and even years to get the answers. Which approach should we use? If our purpose is to identify opportunities, we should use estimates. It requires little effort, and we get answers promptly. But how about accuracy? Notice that the purpose of these figures is as inputs to a managerial decision. Should we or should we not embark on a program to reduce these costs? For such a purpose, the estimates are good enough. Let's go back to that printing company. The total cost of poor quality was $1.7 million. That was an estimate. Suppose that the true figure might have been as low as 1.4 million, or as high as 2.0 million. The reaction of the managers would have been, every one of those three numbers is too big, so let's go after some cost reductions. In other words, despite a wide range of estimates, the managerial decision would have been identical. In preparing estimates, we should use the tools of the trade. We can count the things, pieces of scrap, hours of repair time, units returned from the field. Those are real numbers. Converting these things to money does require estimates, but we can make use of a team of managers, a jury, to reduce the error of estimate. We should include the accountant on that team to secure the accountant's special know-how, experience, and credibility with upper management. Proof of the need may also come from sources other than cost figures. We may be losing sales. Our product does what we claim for it, but some competitor's product does it better. The color TV set was a case in point. In session 3, we will look at some cases in which proof of the need relates to sales rather than costs. Proof of the need may also originate with new forces generated by the impact of quality on society. The most dramatic needs have been those demanded for product safety and for meeting government regulations. There are also cases which are less dramatic. For example, the new laws mandating energy-efficient vehicles have forced the design of lighter vehicles. This, in turn, means lighter components. A case in point is the casting for the automotive engine block. Over the years, the foundries had learned how to make these castings with tolerable levels of waste. For example, with the prevailing process, a wall surface might undulate like this. With a thick wall, such variation might be tolerable. With a thinner wall, it might not be tolerable. The result was a sharp rise in waste. Reduction of this waste then had to await improvements based on discovering, with greater precision, the relationships between process variables and product results. Irrespective of the source of proof of the need, we use the same universal sequence for breakthrough. When summaries of the costs of poor quality are shown to managers, we get mixed reactions. Some managers react, these costs are shockingly high. We must do something to reduce these costs. The reaction of other managers is different. Sure, the numbers are big, but that's no proof that they're too big. We can't act on such vague generalities. We must be more specific. Usually, all of these comments are valid. The costs are too high. Something should be done about it. We cannot reduce costs generally. We must be more specific. To become specific, we make use of the project concept. A project is a problem scheduled for solution. All improvement is made project by project and in no other way. That is why project identification is the second step in the breakthrough sequence and will be the subject for our next session. Now let's review the high points of this session. Our objective is to develop the habit of annual improvements in quality and annual reductions in quality-related costs. By improvement, we mean improving chronic poor quality and reducing chronic high costs. Breakthrough is the organized creation of beneficial change. All breakthrough follows a universal sequence of events. The first step in that sequence is proof of the need. The language of money helps to prove the need to upper management. Estimates can provide prompt figures at little effort and with an accuracy adequate for managerial decision-making. So much for the high points of this session. Now the homework. What to do between now and the next session. At each session, following the video presentation, I will propose some activities for the study team to carry out prior to the next session. My proposals will not fit all team situations. The projects chosen by teams vary widely, as do the conditions in the various companies. Also, each team will have its own ideas and proposals on what to do prior to the next session. It is the study team, not the lecturer, which has the last word. Here are my proposals. Ask each team member in rotation to nominate a topic which might become the team's project for improvement during this series of sessions. As these topics are nominated, list them on the blackboard without challenge. This is the brainstorming technique. After all nominations have been listed, discuss them and agree on a short list of several nominations which are promising enough to warrant further study as potential projects for the team to tackle during this series of sessions. For this short list, discuss how to estimate the amount of money at stake. Then agree on how to put the estimates together for discussion at the next session.